Hi guys, just wanted to talk about a couple of contentious issues in the city with regard to our municipal and provincial government. So, and that's the placement of these supportive housing facilities. I think everybody agrees that we need some sort of supportive housing facilities for the crisis that we have on our hands with regard to drugs and mental health in our community. However, it seems that there's been a complete negligence on part of both the provincial and the municipal government with regard to the placement of these supportive housing facilities, and also the concept of these supportive housing facilities, i.e., being wet housing. So recently I discovered that there's a new supportive housing facility going up on Boxwood Road. Which wouldn't be such a problem, except firstly, it's again going to be a wet housing facility, and secondly, it's right next to a daycare. Well, both the provincial and the municipal government are reassuring everybody that it's not going to be a problem. There's going to be security, or I don't know if there's even going to be security, but they're basically listing a bunch of reasons why this is going to work this time, because it's complex care. It's a different type of supportive housing. I think the bottom line is that it's wet housing, and most people in the community don't support wet housing. When you speak to the councillors about this, their cop-out is, well, we voted against this. We didn't want wet housing, but the province forced us to have wet housing. When I showed up at the open house at the daycare with Sheila Malcolmson, the representative for the NDP in our riding, she used the council as a cop-out, saying that, well, it's the council that decided that it's going there because they're the ones that changed the zoning. They're the ones that allow the zoning. So we've clearly got both the municipal and provincial governments working towards the same goal, and pointing the fingers at each other as to whose fault it is, why it's going next to a daycare. When I approached one of the councillors about this online a couple of months back, she told me, well, if there was any opposition to this, they should have shown up on so and so date when we were discussing this project. Here's a couple of problems with that. So when I discussed this project with the owner of the daycare said that they showed up at the council meeting with a bunch of people from the community that represent both the businesses in the community and the residential area in the community right next to the supportive housing, and they didn't want wet housing, and there was a file with letters an inch thick dropped on their desk to read through, and that a half an hour later, a decision was made to go forward with supportive housing anyways. So there was no possible way that the council and the mayor could have read through all of those letters and had a proper public consultation in order for that housing to go in. There was a case recently in Kitsilano where the supportive housing, the BC Supreme Court decided against supportive housing going in next to a daycare for that exact reason, is that proper public consultation wasn't done. Last week, when I showed up at a council meeting wanting to ask questions about the data center project and the supportive housing going next to a daycare, they didn't allow me to speak on the topic. I think the mayor used the Safe Spaces bylaw. I'm not sure exactly which bylaw he used not to allow me to speak, but regardless, I was not allowed to speak or ask questions about it because it wasn't on the I wasn't a delegate to discuss a topic on that day, and it wasn't a topic of discussion on that day. The problem with that is that people have lives, people have children to take care of, people have jobs to go to, and the councillors were elected to represent us, and they don't seem to be doing that. They seem to be just going along with whatever the city staff and the province tells them, rather than representing the people that elected them to be in their position to make decisions for the people and to represent the people's wants and needs. Now, they tell us that this facility going next to a daycare is going to be completely fine, and they're going to have it completely under control. And it's a special kind of housing. It's a complex care. I'm very much in support of having housing for people that have mental health issues, people or affordable housing next to a daycare. If you must have wet housing because the province says so, why put it next to a daycare? I can't think of a worse place to put wet supportive housing than next to a daycare. Can you? And apparently the city council and city staff seem to share my opinion with regard to having these supportive housing facilities next to them, because they recently passed having a big perimeter wall built around their parking lot to keep their city staff safe. So they're concerned about their city staff being safe from these types of facilities. However, they're not so concerned about having your 3-year-old child next to these types of facilities with nothing in place to protect your 3-year-old child. Sheila Malcolmson suggested putting higher fences around the wet housing, and also filtration systems to prevent the smoke from various drugs and chemicals being smoked on site going to the daycare yard. Obviously, this is a completely preposterous recommendation. The sensible solution would be to not have wet housing next to a daycare. And as I said, if you must have wet housing, put it somewhere where it doesn't affect residents or children. Put it in an industrial area, only industrial area, not an area where there are daycares, where there are businesses that might be affected. If you want to run this, radical social experiment, do it where it doesn't affect the regular citizens. And I understand the city council does not make this decision with regard to the provincial policy, but they have power over where this facility goes. They have certain powers that allow them to make a decision over where this facility goes.